while I'm still actively collecting toys, there's definitely very few and far between releases now that I'm getting really excited about because these were figures that were part of an original list, if you will, that started 20 years ago. It's great to get figures, but when a list figure comes out, to me, especially because I'm so deep in, 20 years ago, we didn't have the huge variety of characters. All right, so in particular, I am talking about the Professor X variant. They're calling it the Savage Land version, the one where he's in a flight suit or a jumpsuit. Um, to me, this was always like the Professor X because it was the one on the cover of issue 2 of X-Men by Jim Lee, where he's being like strangled by Magneto, and I just always loved that cover. And when the Professor X with his hover chair came out, I was sad that it wasn't the jumpsuit version, but I understood why because they didn't have the jumpsuit tooled and they had a suit body tooled. It made sense. I mean, you can totally get away with that, and it works. But as soon as I saw Wonder Man, I was like, oh, boom, we're getting at Professor X in a jumpsuit. Sweet. And then they announced a Professor X figure, and I got really excited. And it turned out to be the Warlord version with all the armor. I was like, oh, all right. Well, they definitely have that suit. I mean, that has to be intentional, right? It's like when Bill Beneke and I were working on DC Universe Classics, we specifically designed the Gentleman Ghost so that his body would work for Joker. And we even made sure that the flower in the buttonhole was a separate piece so that we could swap it out for the Joker's signature squirting rose thingy. So yeah, I was glad they obviously, had this in mind and they just were one more Professor X away. So he was announced coming out March 30th and you could pre-order him only on Target.com, which I missed. I never pre-order on Target because I've never had, honestly, problems finding Target exclusives. I hear people having a lot of problems with them, but I guess, I don't know, maybe I could have Target too much. I even found the Red Hulk that I was like that one Marvel Legend I just never saw. It wasn't a figure I wanted to buy, but I was like, I never saw Red Hulk. But then I saw him when they re-released him last year. All right, I'm getting on a tangent. The point being is we went down to Target on March 30th, as the app said, and I was ready to plunk down my money for one Chuck Xavier in said green jumpsuit, and none was to be had. Nor, even a more interesting point, there was no tag for him. There was no space. So he had a release date online, but he was not in the current planogram. I was like, okay, I understand. So we just have to wait for either the next planogram to come around or maybe there's an end cap coming. I mean, obviously, Target has a whole bunch of X-Men figures. They just revealed, Mystique and Weapon X. Are they going to be putting all 4 of them out at the same time as a part of a program? They're just like slotting in the online releases. I don't know. I feel like more information would be appreciated. And all of this comes down to a question that I get a lot is why toys can't have release dates the way records or CDs or what's a record? What's a CD? I'm aging myself. Books, comic books always come out, right? There's new Comic Wednesday. So, and I mean, it used to be Tuesdays were DVDs, I think. And there was a day that books came out. I used to work in Barnes and Noble when I was in high school. Anyway, regardless, there's never been that for toys. And people ask that all the time. Why can't there be release dates for toys? And in this case, there was a release date, right? Online, it said it was coming out March 30th. So the reason is there's just not that, the production's not high enough to justify all of the logistics of a launch, of making sure, stores put out a specific carton at a specific time. They'll do that for like a movie launch when it's a whole planogram change, but one SKU, that's a little, it's labor intensive. Think of it that every Target, there's 2,000, 3,000 Targets out there, 2,000, I think, a little over. So that means you have to make sure on that day, the toy manager, whoever's stocking that area, pulls this one exclusive and makes sure it's out there. Well, think of that times 20, all the different companies, all the different exclusives. People would be doing this constantly. That's why they don't have release dates. They may have available dates online, which is what this was, but I feel like they didn't do a good enough job explaining this wouldn't be available in stores on March 30th, because that information would have been useful yesterday. So, I'm a patient man. I'm sure it will show up. I don't think this is going to be one that flies off the shelves. Although, it is I feel like it's a more signature look for him than the suit. But again, maybe it's just because I love Jim Lee's run, and I also love the whole Savage Land arc in the cartoon show, which honestly he actually wore his the let's call it the jumpsuit even more than just the Savage Land. I mean, I was actually wanted to display this version in the yellow chair, so I'm just basically going to take the suit one out and replace it with this one, because this was the Charles Xavier that was from my original list, which only leaves Feral and, well, yeah, that's it, because originally Excalibur wasn't on my list, but I added it after that awesome 3-pack with Kitty Pryde, so now I also need Rachel Summers. She got added. But as far as the original list, this checks off the Chuck that I wanted, and I look forward to my Feral coming very, very soon, right? Thanks, Marvel Legends. And I hope this explains a little bit why, release dates don't work as well, especially for single toys. You'll see it occasionally for giant releases. They used to do it for Star Wars, but even that, has waned. How long has it been since there's been like a Force Friday, right? When we had one of those like events. Really, now it's just about planogram swaps and knowing what week Target and Walmart do that. That's your best shot of getting new toys freshly put out is when the planogram swaps. Other than that, release dates just ain't happening. There's just not the quota is just not enough to justify the manpower, woman power, people power, toy power. All right. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sharing. It's the best way to support this channel. I appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video.